Good morning, everyone. My name is Audrey. I'm stitchywitch42 here on flosstube over on Instagram. Today is Wednesday, the 12th of June, 2024, and I'm back again. It's been a while because life. But since my channel is about cross-stitch life, the universe, and everything, it's only fair that life kind of distracts from me recording on a regular basis. So I've got a lot to share. Don't know if this is going to be a short video, a medium length video, or a long video, but it's an overdue video, okay? So, first of all, I want to say thank you to new subscribers. I've noticed my numbers are going up again. Mine kind of creep and level out and bounce and creep and level out and bounce, and yeah, it doesn't matter, but thank you to anybody new who has subscribed. Thank you to those of you who keep coming back and listening to me ramble about whatever. I appreciate it. And I wanted to say thank you for all of the comments left from my last video. I was telling you that I had gone and had a CT scan done and had been told I had diverticulitis. Not fun. Not fun, but I'm feeling much better. I did get in to go see my doctor and asked him some questions about it. Like, how long could this episode last? And he said, well, it could last a couple of months. I'm very thankful to say that it's pretty much gone and has been gone for a few days now. The other thing that I wanted to ask him about was why my skin felt so sensitive and itched. And I was not expecting the answer he gave me, but he goes, do you have a rash? And I said, no. And he goes, then my best guess is you've got a very mild case of shingles. Really? Shingles. He goes, have you had the vaccine? And I said, oh yeah. I got it right away. As soon as I was eligible to get it, I got that vaccine right away because I'm that one person that when I was a child had chickenpox not once, but twice. Yeah. How do I know that? I remember hearing my dad have a phone conversation with someone, and he was making the comment that my younger sister had the chickenpox, and now he was done. All four of us had chickenpox, so he was done with that. And then a couple of days later, I went over to my friend's house, and her mom was in the kitchen, and I asked her, I said, I've got these spots all over my chest. Can you tell me what it is? And I showed her, and she goes, Audrey, go home. You have chickenpox. My dad wasn't a happy camper, but after that bout of chickenpox for me, he was done with all four of us. So yeah, I'm that person. So anyway, the other thing I talked with my doctor about was that on the CT scan, they had noticed a spot that hadn't been there when they did the CT scans last year prior to my appendix or gallbladder surgeries. So this was something new, and they wanted to get a better view of it, so they scheduled an MRI for me. It's fine. It's good. Nothing to worry about. But I went in and I did the MRI, and I'm not going to go too much details into the MRI because I'm claustrophobic, and I know thinking about it or talking about it or hearing about it might trigger somebody else who's claustrophobic too. But I would like to tell you how I dealt with it. They give you an option of taking Xanax before you have your MRIs done. I can't do that. I have to deal with mine mentally. So the technician got me ready, and she said there will be a voice that you have to listen to the instructions. And the voice was, take a deep breath and hold it. And then I counted how many seconds it was until the voice came back on and said, resume normal breathing. Okay, now that I know that, I can start distracting myself in my brain. And what I did was a mental floss tube. So the voice came on and said, take a deep breath and hold it. And I counted the 8 seconds, and it came back and said, resume breathing. And then I started my video. Hi, my name is Audrey. I'm stitchywitch42 here on Take a Deep Breath and Hold It. Resume normal breathing. This is my channel about cross-stitch, life, the universe, and everything. What that mental floss tube was about, I don't know. I don't remember. But it got me through it. So I was done with that. Since I was in Salem, I decided that I was going to go and pick up a couple of things. Well, I was going to go and pick up one thing at Joann's that I wanted. I ended up getting 2 purchases that are kind of sort of cross-stitch related. So I went into Joann's and I asked them if they had that vinyl chalkboard material. And she said, oh yeah, it's over on that aisle somewhere. So I went over to that aisle. I found a big bolt of it, but it was all wrapped up and you had to purchase the whole bolt. And I need this little itty bitty, teeny tiny little piece of vinyl fabric. And I wasn't spending that much money on a little itty bitty, teeny tiny piece of vinyl. Yeah, no. So I looked up and down the aisle and eventually I found it on the bottom shelf back at the end. They had a bolt you could buy from. So I took that up to the counter and I asked the lady, what's the least amount I can purchase? And she said, 2 inches. Okay, can I have 2 inches, please? So I got a 2-inch strip by however wide the bolt is. I don't know. I think I paid 23 cents for it, but I was good with that. And she asked me, as they always do when you're at the cutting counter, so what are you working on? And I said, well, I have a thing. And she looks at me and I said, you know, a thing from the Addams Family? And she goes, okay. And I said, last year I went to a stitching retreat and we have a name badge and I need to make a new one because Thing went with me to my retreat last year and Thing will be going to my retreat again this year. And I felt Thing needed to have a name badge. And she goes, oh. I think she thought I might be just a wee bit weird. She's not wrong. So I came home and I made Thing his name badge for this year's Pacific Northwest Stitch Summit. Now, a few weeks ago, when I was up at Acorns, I was talking with Janine, and I said, if by any chance you have an extra charm this year, Thing would like to know if he could have one. And her reply was, does Thing need a full kit? And I said, no, Thing doesn't need a full kit, but he would like a charm. Now, I didn't think to ask for one from last year, but when I was making his name badge, I realized that I had a little 2023 charm that I think was sent to me from Michelle, Maine Moose Mom. So I put that on there for his first retreat, and hopefully, if there's an extra charm, when I go this September, he'll get his second charm. If not, I know I have a 2024 charm upstairs, so Thing will be taken care of. But he is all ready to go to his second cross-stitch retreat this year. Because I do these things. My other purchase that I made while I was at Joann's, I hadn't expected to. But you know, you can't just go in and buy a 2-inch piece of vinyl material and not look around at other things. So I wandered down this one aisle And it was the one where they had their rolling totes for your sewing machines. Last year at Stitch Summit, Cheryl, half Stitching with the Sisterlies, she used one, it was a larger version of it for one of her larger sewing machines, to pack all of her stuff to take to the hotel. And I thought that was a really excellent idea. So I purchased this one. And I like this. First of all, I wasn't planning on getting it, but it was on sale for 40% off. And when I went up to the registers, the salesperson gave me an additional 20% off, so it was a really good price. But this thing has one pocket here, one on either end. It has 3 pockets there. There's 4 pockets lining the inside there, and on the top of the case, there's another really narrow pocket there. And I thought, how great to use something like this for when I go to a retreat, because if you've been to a retreat, you know you pack 5 or 6 projects, and you might work on one. And you pack the things that you want to take up there to give away as gifts, or to put on the free table, or to put on the brag table, or. And then you get the things that come back. And I thought, this would be perfect to use, because that front pocket right there, my daylight fits in it perfectly. And I can get my chargers in there, and I can get all my stuff in there. And I got it for 40% off plus an additional 20% off, so I thought it was a good deal. So, have to look at my notes because it's been a while and I can't remember what I was doing. But anyway, I got that shopping done, and then I came home and I had some projects that I wanted to work on to get finally finished. So I think it was the next day I went upstairs and I started working on one of them. This was sent to me from Devi. It was the Riolis kit upside down. If you remember, this is the one that it was a kit, and it came with 14 count Aida in it, and it had all the wool threads in there, and I promptly used the wrong wool thread and then had to get rid of that and go and pull DMC colors and restitch it on a linen myself. But I wanted to get it finished. I've got a stack of things upstairs that I want to get finished, and I've got some ideas for getting them finished. I just need to do it. So anyway, I went upstairs, and because I knew I wanted to do this as a round ornament, I used my husband's circular quilting templates. That's right, my husband has quilting templates. He doesn't quilt, but he draws things for stuff that he wants to do on the Jeep and the camper that he's building, and he has round circular quilting templates. So I went upstairs and I got them because I knew I could use that to figure out how big I needed to make my circle template. And this guy is pretty big. He's 6 inches around, but this is upside down. And he is just so cute. So I just did 2 pieces of mat board, covered the back with bats, because this is one of my hashtag 24 bats in 2024 projects. I put some rickrack in there and some black and orange ribbon up here for the holder, but he is done. And I still think he is one of the cutest bats that I've seen. Speaking of hashtag 24 bats in 2024, the other day I was watching Michael. She is Sweet Woodruff on flosstube and over on Instagram. And she was talking about hashtag 24 bats in 2024. She's done 3, I think she said. But she said one of the things that she's enjoying about it is just going and looking for the patterns that have bats. And it is. Every time I see something new, I've changed and added pieces to my original 24 that I had. And it's just fun to see them and to see what everybody else is doing. But anyway, check her out. I will link her down below. Also, on Instagram, Jen, and I didn't write down her Instagram name, she has done 16 individual bats on one piece of fabric, and I'm loving that because she's going to have a bat sampler by the time she's done, and I just think that is so cool. And then there's Linda, who has stitched 14 of them. And for reasons that neither she or I can figure out, every time she tries to link them to my hashtag on Instagram, they won't show up. So she just messages me, and I keep track of those in my book because life. I keep trying to get ahead of Linda. She's finished 14, and I've just started number 14. It's not a contest. If I get 24 bats done this year, I'm going to be absolutely amazed. And I've had fun seeing it when people are posting their pictures and everything. So if you're on Instagram, go check out hashtag 24 bats in 2024. Most of the pictures there are mine, but not all of them. And stitch bat. So I got this one done, and I had to go run some errands because I had done a giveaway a while back and I still hadn't mailed out the project bags because I didn't have any mailers that big. So I made myself go down and get them and go mail them, and then I decided to go over to Goodwill because I haven't been there for a while. And you got to check out Goodwill or any thrift store to see if you can find something to use for finishing. Well, I did find something. I found this little stand. It originally came from Hobby Lobby, and you can either hang it here or it's got the little stand here on the back, but I had another piece that I wanted to finish from my hashtag 24 bats in 2024, and I thought this would be the perfect size for it. So this is a study in bats. And again, I just put it on a piece of mat board and then glued it down to this. I was going to do the magnet and washers, but I couldn't find the magnets. So I just glued it down on this, and I'm really happy with how that looks. And plus it makes a nice little stand all by itself. So that was my second finish. My third finish that day was simply entitled Bats. This is the one by Stitches and Styles. This one is from Bad Stitch on Etsy. This one is Stitches and Styles on Etsy, and this is Bats. And I knew when I stitched this one that I was just going to do a long, skinny pin pillow finish on it. I think that it turned out really cute, and on the back it's got cobwebs. And yes, those things are on it too. But I think that that turned out, so that gave me 3 fully finished items. But I had another one that I knew that I could finish. And this one decided to be a booger. So I was stitching on a little Mill Hill kit, Boris the Bat. And a lot of times when I stitch the Mill Hill kits, the smalls, I just back them with sticky back felt because I cut it out, I put it on the back of the perforated paper, and then I can cut it out at the same time that I'm cutting out the perforated paper to the shape. I wanted to add a beaded strand to hang it, and I had my pattern sitting on my desk upstairs. and there was the little package of beads. So I went and got my tray. A couple years ago I bought these. I have 3 of them now. They're trays that hold the little round containers, and I separate all my Mill Hill beads by number in those. But I have one that I keep all my extra Mill Hill beading needles in, and I have my Mill Hill beading threaders in there. Well, I pulled that tray out, had it sitting on my desk, happened to notice that the purple I was going to use was in one of those little tubs, and that was what was left over in the little baggie. And I got the bright idea, I'll pour the beads into the baggie. And then somehow or another, I dropped the little tub of beads, and they were all over my desk. And I said my word. I may have said my word a couple of times. Yeah. So I just looked at all those beads that were on my desk, and I went and picked up my beading needle and my floss, and I started scooping up the beads from my desk because I was going to have to pick them up anyway. I might as well just, bead with them. But I finished Boris, the bat, and the little beaded hanger. And then I picked up all the beads on my desk. So I have 4 fully finished items. I have 2 more that are waiting for me upstairs from my hashtag 24bats in 2024. I've asked Mark if he has any styrofoam for me because I was thinking I could do a cube finish with 2 of them and have one on the front and one on the back. But I need Mark to go out and see if he has styrofoam. If not, I need to go buy some. And then I have a couple more that I want to finish. I have the one that I did the little biscornu topper. I need to stitch the border around it and stitch the back of it, and then I can cut it apart and get it stitched together. And the little cupcake one, I have a tin upstairs to put that in, but I have to go back and watch a tutorial on how to do that because I have an idea, but whether my idea is right or not, I don't know. So we will see. I've got 4 more. Yeah, 4 more that I would like to get finished here real soon. Okay, so after getting those finished, getting done with the MRI and all of that stuff, it was time for First Thursday. And I went up there and met up with Anna and Margaret and all the other ladies that were up there. And Anna had 2 of her friends with her, Irene, who I had met before, and Irene's sister Julie. So what I stitched on while I was up at Acorns and Threads is the pattern that I am currently obsessed with. Lola Crow, The Haunted Library. I am having so much fun with this and can't get enough done on it. I could be totally monogamous on this. Yeah, I can say the words. Monogamous on this one just to get it done. I love watching it to develop. But that spiderweb fabric that I've got it on, it's a pain. Just saying, it's a pain. So I was stitching on this, and this is where I'm at. I had just finished the Dementor down here and was starting on the gravestone there. And Amy came back again this month. Amy is the designer. She is Lola Crow. So there is a photo taken by Margaret, I stole it from her, of Amy and I together at Acorns and Threads, and I'm holding this stitched piece and got to sit down and chat with her. She is such a lovely lady. She told me that the Dementor, when she designed it, was actually the ghost of Christmas Future. It's a Dementor. It just is. if you look at it, right here is some of the spider web that's printed on the fabric, but it looks like it's coming out of the Dementor's face. So it's sucking all the happy thoughts. It's a Dementor. I've also learned on this fabric, and I think I've said it before, I have to stitch each element and get everything, because the spider web is printed on the fabric, but it's pretty much the same color as DMC 844. So I know I told you I missed a spot up here and realized I was seeing the printed fabric and had to go back and catch that stitch. And then I thought I had 3 stitches along the top of the bookshelves that I thought, well, they're the wrong color. And I actually got my seam ripper out. I was going to unpick those stitches because they were the wrong color. And when I looked at it through the magnifier, I realized it's the spider web. The skull down here, I skipped a stitch, because when you get to some of the spaces, that print looks like it's stitched. And so I'm really having to finish each element individually and then double check it to make sure that I'm not missing anything, because that spiderweb print looks like it's stitched, but it's not. The other thing that's difficult about it is that occasionally the spiderweb print is over the hole on the Aida. This is an 18 count Aida. And trying to see it. Down here it's easier because there's less spiderweb. Up here was a nightmare, and it'll be the same way when I get over to doing this side here. But look at this. This is just gorgeous. And I love it on the fabric. And I got to talk with Amy about it, and it was just so nice to meet her and to learn more of her thoughts behind why she designed it. I'm getting a kick watching everybody working on the aquarium and seeing how it comes along. I don't do stitch-alongs like that. I have to see the whole pattern before I do it. I don't know if I'll ever do her haunted greenhouse or the aquarium, but the library, I have a Hobbit library. I'm a reader. It has a Dementor. Yeah. And because it has bats in it, I'm counting it as a project for my hashtag 24 bats in 2024. Okay. So that night, no, when I was at Acorns, Anna asked me if I wanted to come up to her house the next day because Irene and Julie were staying with her. And like I said, I had met Irene before when Cheryl and Anna and I went over to Bend at the beginning of May. And when we were there then, she was telling us about a trip that she had taken to Botswana. And wow, what a trip to take, right? Well, she was going to share her pictures on Anna's big screen in the Beehive, and she wanted to know if I wanted to come up. Excuse me. Everybody talks about itchy noses. I get belches. Just thought I'd throw that out there, because this is what happens on my channel. Anyway, she asked if I wanted to come up the next day, and I think at that moment it finally hit that yes, I am retired, because she was asking me to come up to her house on a Friday. And Friday and Saturdays were regularly scheduled work days, and I don't have to go to work. So I was able to say, yes, please, I would like to come up and see the videos. And yeah, that would be very, very good. So I went up to Anna's house the next day. Cheryl was there. We got to see these pictures of this amazing trip to Botswana. And I had to ask the question, what do you do when you have to go to the bathroom? Irene was saying that there was 6 to 8 people in a Jeep caravan type vehicle. There were 3 or 4 caravans. Each one had a driver and a guide. And she goes, it's a really good question, because when you had to go, you would tell the guide that you needed to use the facilities. Only there are no facilities. So they'd stop, and the guide would get out, and he would go see if there is a tree or a rock that you could go behind. And if there was, he'd motion you to come out so that you could do your business. And he'd stand there, not watching, but guarding you, right? Or if there was something behind said tree or rock, snakes, spiders, lions, elephants, other big critters, he'd just tell you to go behind the Jeep. Okay. A couple videos ago, I was telling you about the trip that Mark wants to take up to the Arctic Circle, and I was concerned about going and camping with the black bears and the grizzly bears and the polar bears. Well, if Irene can do that in Botswana, I can do it in Canada, and Mark will be my guide and stand out there and protect me from the bears. So there you go. There you go. You have to get this information so you know what you're doing for future trips. I do anyway. Are you happy I'm here talking to you about using the non-existing facilities out in the wild and having protection? Okay, so last weekend, Mark and I headed over to the coast because we just celebrated our 41st wedding anniversary. And this was another moment where I realized, yes, I am retired and I get to do things when I want to, because I have a whiteboard calendar on the refrigerator, and I put notes on there what day of the week it is, because I'm already losing track of what day it is. So I have my days up on the calendar, and in the evening I go and I'll erase whatever day it is so that I know what day it is. Then it works, okay? It works for me. But I had written out the calendar for June, and I had put on it a big heart with a 41 in it, and then Mark comes and puts OMG underneath it. And he goes, would you like to go to the coast for the weekend? Silly man. Would I like to go to the coast? I always like to go to the coast. Yes. And he goes, okay. So we planned a trip, booked a hotel, and went. And again, I got to do it without having to ask anybody at work if I could have a day off. I'm retired. I can do things. Wow. Wow. I like that. So we took the Jeep over and just made an adventure out of it. We stopped at an estate sale in Salem on the way out, and the woman whose estate sale it was, she was obviously a quilter. There was a basket, a big basket that had quilted postcards, which I wouldn't have known what they were if I hadn't met Anna, because she makes them and for the Sisters Quilt show, and people buy them and collect them and everything. And I think this woman made a lot of them because they had her name and they had years written on the back of them. But then there were others that were addressed to her. I didn't even ask how much they were because I wouldn't know what to do with them. I'm kind of disappointed that I didn't pick up a couple of them because I should have. But then going inside, there was one room that, it wasn't a big room, but every wall had shelves on it, and every shelf had 3 or 4 boxes that were full of quilt patterns. And there was boxes with fabric bowls that she had made, and there was so much quilting stuff in there. Anyway, we headed off on our adventure, and Mark got to show off his Jeep to so many people. We stopped in Veneta to have lunch at some food carts, and this guy riding along just had to stop and ooh and ah over the Jeep, so Mark got to talk to him about it. And then we're headed down the road, and we're traveling down Highway 38. And all of a sudden, Mark is slamming on the brakes, shifting down and turning the Jeep around. And I'm like, what's going on? And he goes, white-haired woman in a ditch by the mailbox. What? Sure enough, we drive back just a little ways, and here is a woman, a white-haired woman, sitting in a ditch right next to a mailbox, right next to the highway. It's a highway, people. There are cars driving past, both directions. Nobody stopped, except for Mark. He got out of the Jeep much faster than me, because me getting in and out of the Jeep is a process. Went over and talked to her for a moment, and then he was coming back, and he goes, I'm calling 911. And he goes, get her some water out of the cooler. I always have Propel water with me. And we had some in the cooler case. No, I am not sponsored by them. I just like this stuff a lot. So I got her a cold bottle of water. I got out. I popped it open. I handed it to her. She started sipping on it. And I was asking her questions. And I asked her what had happened. And she told me that she had walked down to the corner store and she was just walking back. There is no corner store. You're on a highway. Okay. And then I looked up the driveway, and this was a steep driveway that you could see up a good 75 feet and still couldn't see the house that she had apparently walked down from. Mark asked me her name for the 911 operator, and I got it from her, and thankfully the last name was the same name that was on the mailbox, so this was her house, so we had her address. I asked her if there was anybody that we could call for, a family member or anything, and she said, no, her husband would be home soon. And I was wondering about that because she thought she'd walk down to the store and back. And I talked with her a little bit further, and she made another comment that she didn't know they were leaving the house that day, but she's sure they'll get home soon. And I'm like, okay, 911 needs to get somebody here because she was obviously very disoriented. But about that time, a truck signals and pulls into the driveway, and it turned out that actually was her husband. And he gets out, and we explain to him why we're there, what we're trying to do, that Mark's on the phone with 911, and he goes, I'll get her up and I'll get her in the house. This man didn't look like he weighed 110 pounds. He wasn't going to get her out of the ditch by himself. So Mark disconnects from 911. He comes over, he helps pick her up, and she's standing there, and she is literally shaking. Her whole body is just shaking. So I told her, I said, you drink the rest of that water. It's got electrolytes in it. You need it. And then Mark and her husband got her into the truck, and they drove up the driveway. My husband has stopped and helped people on the side of the road so many times. And like I said, we're on a highway. There were cars before we got there. No one stopped. There were cars passing us while we were standing there. No one stopped. People, you need to learn to stop. Just saying. White-haired woman sitting in a ditch by a mailbox on a highway. You need to stop. We continued on, and as they say, no good deed goes unpunished. 10 miles down the road, the Jeep runs out of gas. Mark has 2 spare tanks on the back. So he went and filled the tank from one of the spares. We got to Reedsport, where we were staying for the night. Had a lovely dinner at the coast. And then the next day, we got up and we were going to just drive around and maybe get out on the beach with the Jeep. So we went down to Winchester Bay. And they have a big campground there that is set up for people who come and drive their ATVs on the Oregon dunes. And we're driving around this camp and met a group of people that had at least 3 48 wheelies Jeeps, but they were 3Bs. I don't know what the numbers mean. Mark explained it to me at one time. Anyway, again, Mark got to share his Jeep and show off everything that he's done to it. Theirs were all very basic because they take them out and drive around on the dunes all the time. That's not what Mark made Chug-a-Lug for. But we left there and we actually did go out and drive a very, very little ways out into the dunes. I don't like that. That's not the part that I like. It's not. So we turned around and went back, and I stood in the parking lot while Mark drove the Jeep around on the dunes, and I got some pictures of him in Chug on the dunes. And then we went off and went to Umpqua Lighthouse and did the museum there. We drove past the lighthouse at Cape Argo. You can't get to it. It's not open to the public. And then we went down to Shore Acres Gardens, and while I went out and walked around the gardens, Mark, surprisingly, was out in the parking lot showing off Chug once again. And then we headed home, and it was a wonderful trip, but for me, it was also exhausting. 535 miles is the longest trip I've taken in the Jeep so far, and getting in and out of the Jeep, I have to get my leg up higher than 30 inches to get into the Jeep. And when I crawl out of the Jeep, I have to slide all the way to the edge until I can feel the ground underneath my toes. My thighs and my hips hurt so bad yesterday that I pretty much was just a slug. And still Mark wants to go up to Canada for like a 3-week trip, and I was this disabled after 2 days. I'll get there. We'll do adventures. It might not be a 3-week long adventure, but we're going to do lots of adventures in Chug. But I took cross-stitching with me. And that case that I bought, this one, I packed it for the weekend because it worked really well. All those pockets, I could put all the things in there that I needed. So, what I took with me to stitch at the beach was another Mill Hill kit. This is BatCat, and this is Project 14 for my hashtag 24bats in 2024. And I took along my frame that I had purchased from Amy. Amy loves toads. It's one of the little magnetic frames that she's starting to make now. I used this one for Boris the Bat, and I used it for this. And these are nice. They're very lightweight. They're easy to hold. They hold the piece of perforated paper in there really, really well. And because it's got all these magnets that holds it shut, it's a great needle minder by itself. Now when I did Boris, I did all the stitching on this, but when I did the beading, I took it off of this because I find it's just a little bit simpler to do the beading and to be able to flex the paper when I'm trying to get that needle, especially when I'm doing a full cross under the beads. But this is where I'm at with Cat Bat, and this is, again, Project 14 for hashtag 24 bats in 2024. So this was a new start since the last time I saw you, and then I have one other new start. A while back, I was watching, well, I know I watched like 2 or 3 people, one of them was Helen, who was talking about going through some of your older projects and looking at them and seeing, are they stuff that you're still in love with? Are you going to finish stitching them? And I kind of sort of did that. And I have a couple that just really aren't speaking to me anymore. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to unkit them, put the fabric and the patterns in some of the Amazon bags that I have and put them away because I'm not ready to completely abandon them, but I want to get the floss put away. And so because of that, I figured I could start a new project. Because I found this, and the name of it is just absolutely perfect for me, and you'll see that in just a moment. But I also really, really like it. This is a pattern by Stitchy Prose, and it is called Stitchy Witchy Bell Pull. So I had bought the linen for this up at Acorns and Threads. It's a Dames of the Needle fabric called Mad Hatter's Tea Party. It's a 32 count fabric. It uses 2 colors of floss, DMC 310 and 550 purple. I'm keeping it in the bag that Colleen made for me, the other half of Stitching with the Sisterlies. And this is where I'm at. So I'm really liking the progress on this. And on the spools here, on the pattern, it calls for them to be cross-stitched. I did a satin stitch on them. So I like the way that works out. And now that I've got my sides going, I can come down and I can start working on the bands as they come down this. I'm not going to make this one into a bell pull. I will actually flat mount it and have a long piece. Whether or not I get this one framed, I don't know, but new start. I'm loving it. And I think that's everything. Let me check my notes, because I had to write down the notes. Yep. I think I've mentioned everything. Today is Biscornu Babes Day at Acorns and Threads, which started 2 minutes ago. I'm not going today. I've been wanting to get a video recorded. Mark is working night paving. He just got home at 8:30 this morning, and I wanted to get a video out of the way while he was upstairs asleep. I have some errands to take care of. I'm still doing paperwork to get my pension from my retirement. I need to get that copied and mailed out, and maybe eventually I'll start getting some money from somebody, because my Social Security hasn't started yet, my pension hasn't started yet. I am getting money from my IRA, and I am getting money from one other pension that I have. Thank God I have a sugar daddy. Anyway, it's been beautiful weather here the last couple of days. I have projects I want to work on outside. I need to get my barrel for my Freds put back together and get that set up. I want to work out in the backyard and get some things planted. It's all good. I have time now. And today I'm not hurting as bad as I was yesterday, so I could maybe go out and do something. Anyway, until we meet again, my friends, live long and stitch on. Bye-bye.